Good evening and welcome to another edition of the DMV Daily Radio Show. It's Friday. I know we late. Traffic is horrendous out there. So call it what you want to call it. You know, we're here. That's the bottom line. We thank God that we made it to another day. You should be doing the same as well. Of course, I'm your host, Hassan Giordano, a.k.a. Mr. Politics, back in the building. And today, we're going to break down the entire legislative process, session 2019, what's going down in Annapolis, what we can come to expect in terms of hot topics and bills that are going down in Annapolis. Caryn York, executive director of the Job Opportunities Task Force, is on her way in as well. She's caught in traffic. Our attorney, Ivan Bates, is on his way. He got caught up in traffic. But you got me. That's all we really need right now, and I got you. So right now, we're going to communicate with one another. But before we get into the program, as always, I got to let you know that this program is brought to you by our fine sponsors, such as the stellar legal team known as Bates & Garcia Law Firm, specializing in criminal defense, real estate, and bodily injury cases. Bates & Garcia is Maryland's legal dream team, so make sure you contact them today for your free consultation. The number is 410-814-4600. And somebody asked me this yesterday. Well, he's always late to the show. Is he going to be late if I hire him as an attorney? Absolutely not. I'm going to tell you, they're there before you're there in the court. So make sure you give them a shout out today. If you need them, tell them DMV Daily referred you, and they will give you the special homeboy discount. 410-814-4600 is the number. Now, the show is also brought to you by those fine, savvy political strategists over there at Politicom Strategic Solutions, who have mastered the art of political communications and successfully gotten people elected since the 1970s. And I'm going to tell you something. If you're looking to run for 2020, you need to contact them. I just got word yesterday that one of their clients running for council, first-time candidate, we're going to have him on the show next week, I'm sure, raised almost $20,000 in 2 months and has never ran for office or been a political entity at all in the city. In 2 months, raised almost $20,000. That's a hell of a haul for somebody running for city council here in the city of Baltimore. We'll talk to them, but we'll also talk to Politicom as well, possibly in the coming weeks. Their clients are doing the thing. We're going to talk about next week. I'm going to write an article. We're going to talk about it here on the show about the financial overhauls of all the candidates running from mayor on down, because again, the process to raise money ended on Tuesday night at midnight, Wednesday. They have until this Wednesday coming up, in order the 16th, to show and file their returns. So we'll know how much money each candidate has, those who are speculated candidates as well as those incumbents and those that we know have already announced. So make sure if you want to get into the game, you want to run, you need a user-friendly website, you need integrated social media and video, you need a campaign plan to ensure your success. I'm telling you, Politicom Strategic Solutions is where it's at. 240-242-7505 is that number. Website, politicomsolutions.com. And with the new year in full swing, so is DMV Daily Media. Of course, you already know about that weekly Annapolis report produced by your man, me, Mr. Politics, and I break down the inner workings of the 90-day legislative session set that just began this past Wednesday at 12 noon. Make sure you tune in DMVDaily.news each and every Monday to get that podcast. You can listen to it right now. If you missed this past Mondays, go to DMVDaily.news, go to the podcast section. It's right there. This past week, I broke down the entire process, how a bill becomes law, different standing committees, what to expect in this upcoming 90-day legislative session, who's the Speaker of the House, who's the Senate President. Speaking of the Senate President, our prayers still go out to him, his wife Patty, and his family, who, of course, if you listened to the show yesterday or the day before, we let you know that he was diagnosed with cancer. And he is fighting very hard for that. He'll still be in the session during the 90-day legislative process, but he'll be also going through treatment processes as well. So we definitely want to extend our prayers out to him and his family. But you want to make sure that you tune in. I'm really pumped up for the Ivan Bates Law and Disorder podcast. That's the one I'm looking forward to. That'll be up as well. You can go right to DMVDaily.news, catch that on a weekly basis as well. Once that's launched, I'm telling you, that is going to deal with not just the legal perspective from a legal perspective, but from common sense. It's going to make you understand the legal process. When we talk about these hot issues, whether it be bail reform, whether it be legalization of marijuana, what that means, not only on state level, but on a federal level as well. Because Ivan does a lot of federal cases and federal law. So we definitely want to make sure that he, all that information. Again, and if you also want to hear the Annapolis report, you'll be able to hear snippets of it every Tuesday, 7:15 to 7:30 a.m. on WRB 1010 a.m. as I go into my 5th year as the political reporter over there at the Larry Young Morning Show. We'll also delve into the politics of 2020 with the Value My Vote 2020 podcast. That'll be a sit-down interview with all the candidates running for office. We're going to sit down, ask them questions. We're going to let you ask them questions about their platform, why they think they should be elected to office, and so much more. So make sure you tune in and look out for that. And of course, if you want your own podcast or show, just talked to somebody last night who I think is going to be having stellar podcast. If he brings this one on, the idea is hot, and I think it'll be one that you'll truly enjoy. But if you need and you want your own podcast, come on over here to DMV Daily. We'll put you on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Play, Facebook Live, Periscope. We just had over 2,000 shares of last night's show on Periscope alone. YouTube Live, and the list goes on and on and on. You can call us 443-294-3900 is the number, or email info@dmvdaily.news. Or just go to the website, dmvdaily.news, sign up on that form right there, and somebody from the firm will get back with you. Now, if you want to join in today's conversation, make sure to call or text your question to the studio phone line. 410-819-2370 is the number. Or if you're watching us on the Facebook Live page, like Teresa Giordano and Brenda Austin and Miss McLaurin is on that. Where's your son at? That's what I want to know. Where's Mark at? Shane Bryan, Donna Purnell, Joseph Kane, Sean Stinnett, Shorty Davis, and one of those candidates that raised all that money, my main man, Philip Westry, all on Facebook. You got a question, you got a comment, put it on our Facebook page. We're always paying attention to that. Remember, today we'll be joined by the executive director of the Job Opportunities Task Force, the remarkable Caryn York. It will be in the building as we dissect what to expect during the upcoming 90-day legislative session. But right now, it's me and Ivan. So we're going to sit there. Oh, well, I spoke a little too soon. 2 more seconds, and I'd have been able to be like I was prophetic. But she messed up my flow. Get on in here. We've been pumping you up the whole time. Come on in here, woman. Come over here, sit next to me. We'll talk about this session and talk. But before we do get into it, while she gets settled, Ivan, tell me what's going on with the Ravens, man. I mean, got a new offensive coordinator. It ain't even been a week.
Yeah, we do. You know, Greg Roman's now, I think, the new offensive coordinator. From what I hear, Marty Morway, he's no longer the offensive coordinator. That's big news. Greg Roman, from my understanding, has a really good relationship with Lamar Jackson. Has been working with Lamar Jackson, helping to mold Lamar Jackson. But you also remember Colin Kaepernick, when he was in San Francisco, he had his best years under John Harbaugh. Mm-hmm. Jim Harbaugh.
Right, John brother.
Yeah, and the offensive coordinator was our new offensive coordinator. So look to probably see an offense that Colin Kaepernick ran in the Ravens' very near future. So that's looking real good. I'm excited by the move, and I think it's going to go really well.
All right. What'd you say? Send me your info. Okay. Gotcha. So, of course, that, you know what? That's going to be interesting. I really want to see, because at first people thought Eric DeCosta does not have a good relationship with John Harbaugh. So many didn't know if they would even think about considering this last year that he has, or if they were going to open it up to the free market. But with this type of move, this all but solidifies John Harbaugh there, because Greg Roman is there mostly because of John Harbaugh.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Look, when you have the Denver Broncos and the Miami Dolphins both rumored to say, hey, we'll give you a draft pick for your coach, that means other people want your coach. So when other people want your coach, I mean, look, you can say what you want to say, but Harbaugh's lasted longer than any other coach in the history of the Ravens. He's done an amazing job. And we've won some, we've lost some, but, he has a Super Bowl ring. That's something that not too many coaches can say.
Got that right. And they did a tremendous. I don't care what you say. You go down with your starting quarterback and to come in with a backup quarterback who has never started an NFL game as a rookie and win 6 of your next 7 and get you into the playoffs with a scheme that they put together almost overnight. I mean, I'm sure they worked on it during training camp for the backup just in case, but I'm sure they didn't work on it too much at all.
No, they did their thing. They really did their thing. I was very happy about that.
Yeah, you can be mad all you want, Ravens fans. I was upset by the loss in the first round, but nonetheless, you can't throw the coaching staff under the bus. Maybe from the game perspective. I don't think they did the best job from the playoff perspective game. Yeah. I think they could have changed some stuff up, but nonetheless, you know about sports? You know a little something about these Ravens?
No.
Oh, don't tell me you're a Pittsburgh fan.
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. I'm about to say you got to go.
I'm not.
All right, family. As I promised, y'all thought I was bluffing because she don't do too much. She only makes certain appearances. That's how high up in stature she is now. But we got her. DMV Daily got her. Caryn York in the building. What's happening, huh?
Hey guys, gentlemen.
Hey.
Okay, this is where it goes down. Yeah, what you guys think? My 2019 new look. My fro is coming back. My curly fro.
I want the fro, but I like that though.
Yeah,
I like that. I like that.
Thank you. Happy New Year. How long are you supposed to say Happy New Year? Until like February 1st?
No, it's over with now.
Oh.
Maybe the MLK Day.
I think once you see a person for the first time.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're in the same building, but this is the first time.
What if I don't see you since March until March?
No,
still
but
happy
if you don't
New
see you by MLK Day, then you just say, "Hey, what's up, dog?"
Correct.
Happy New Year, because it's the first time I've seen you
Happy New
in
Year.
forever, stranger.
Don't do that.
Yeah,
well, I mean, Ivan and our offices are in the same building, and we rarely get a chance to actually talk.
Is my name Ivan? Okay. All right. We ain't gonna get into all that because we on air right now. So, speaking of working in the same building, who do you work for? Tell the family if they don't know you. I don't know how they don't. They must be watching from Michigan or New Orleans down there with Harrison. Who do you work for? What do you do? That whole spiel.
So I am the executive director of the Job Opportunities Task Force, JOTF. We're a statewide nonprofit based in Baltimore City, and our focus is how do we help low-wage workers advance to high-wage jobs. Focus on eliminating educational and employment barriers. We run a pre-apprenticeship construction training program, Project Jumpstart, in partnership with Associated Voters and Contractors. We do a bit of public policy advocacy, both inside and outside of Annapolis, and we do a bit of research in public education.
So y'all do everything, basically.
We do a lot.
But Annapolis is your baby.
That's my baby. I mean, our organization is an advocacy organization, and before I became executive director, I was a member of the policy team, and then at one point led the policy team. So I'm policy all throughout.
So do you still go to Annapolis every day now that you're the executive director, not so much the lobbyist policy person?
I don't go every day. I have a policy team now, but you all understand how intense and contentious Annapolis can be sometimes. And there are going to be certain issues where, the executive director might need to come down and with some force.
Yeah, put some muscle on some people.
Put some muscle. A little bit, whatever I got.
And lean. That means y'all legislators, she going to lean on you. Don't take the slim nature for the slim body for you. She gonna beat somebody's ass down there. I'm just telling you, that's just how she is. But anyway, ain't you over West Baltimore? A rough Southwest?
Don't come from my community like that, okay? Don't you come from my Highlands Market.
You can handle yourself.
Community.
You handle yourself.
I can, and I can handle myself because what a lot of folks don't realize, and I'm sure you two know this very well. Many times you move into neighborhoods and you think that, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to really make sure that I'm looking both ways, 3 ways, 4 ways to make sure, I'm protecting myself. You'd be surprised how many of my neighbors look out for me and I don't even realize it.
Oh, that's good.
And so and I live by myself, man, my dog Sasha. And my neighbors are looking out. So yes, I live in Highlands Market, off of Lombard, right there at Lombard and
Better
Carrollton.
not put out. Don't tell them too much. They might stop you coming from DMVDaily. You better watch it now.
You're right. I don't want no problems.
So, first of all, we heard the rather sad news about Senate President Mike Miller. But that seemed to, when I was down there the first day, it kind of overshadowed a lot of stuff. People were whispering, but it wasn't really public yet. But there was whisperings more so that he was leaving, which I thought people were a little bit insensitive. Richard, our friend, went a little overboard on Facebook, if you ask me, about, he got to go. And, the man has health issues. But as a legislative, you're a journeywoman now, right? You got time in, right? You got hardball time in, so you can kind of call your shots. Is there a difference down there now that you kind of see the possible vulnerability of Mike Miller? Is there any sense that, now is the time for us to get bills passed this year that we might not have gotten passed in years past because of him?
No. And I say that because, we have to understand that Senate President Mike Miller is the longest serving Senate president in the history of the United States of America. And it takes a certain kind of savvy, a certain kind of power, just a certain kind of oomph to be able to lead the Senate chamber through different administrations, through, different decades and generations. And that is Senate President Mike Miller. And so there's a lot of respect given to the fact that here is a man that's been able to preside over the upper chamber for so long. Here's a man that what he wants done, he gets done. If there are senators within his caucus that he needs to look out for, he looks out for them. Whether it's, helping to shore up any necessary funding, campaign support that you may need, whether it's helping get some additional votes to push a particular initiative that he feels is a good look for the caucus and for the state of Maryland. So he is a master, brilliant negotiator, and he has ruled with a heavy hand in his chamber. Some would say fairly, some would say unfairly. And so because of that, as I mentioned, there's a lot of respect given to the man. And so you actually don't see a lot of folks on both sides of the aisle, right? You don't see them kind of rejoicing jubilantly in the hallway saying, what's the next step? Of course, you have folks wondering, like, okay, who's going to be the next Senate president, right? You have those rumblings.
Who is going to be the next Senate president?
I mean, so listen, right? You have the process is the caucus is supposed to determine who the next Senate president is. But, there are some other things that's taken into account when you decide who's going to be, who would lead the upper chamber. Of course, they're going to look at a senator that has a bit of seniority, but also what type of money are you working with, right? How robust is your campaign war chest that will allow you to add monies to fellow senators who may be struggling in their respective districts? Mike Miller has been able to do that. That's another reason why he's so respected. And so, folks they're, like I said, they're not running through the hallways. They respect the man. And in addition, you have the Senate president still walking around saying, I'm going to ride this out till the wheels fall off. And
till the band stops playing.
Know what I mean? And with him saying that, no one wants to be put in a position to say that they were, very blatantly, visibly, excited about the fact that he has cancer. And,
right.
Regardless of, your positions with him, right? We did not agree on everything. But at the end of the day, like, the man was just diagnosed with prostate cancer, and you got to give respect to that.
Richard, are you listening? That was the point.
Richard?
Richard. I'm going to show him to you one time. Okay. Great young man. Great supporter of this program. We know Richard. Okay. Young Richard from, the Democratic Party and the whole. Yes. Exactly. Yes. So we had this debate on Facebook because, I understand there's a lot of advocates, especially the progressive wing, who feel like Mike Miller. We had this argument with Mark when he was here. They don't take. I personally, look, I gave Mike Miller an award, right, during our, I used to do my every yearly awards, and then we did this year with the NAACP during that year. I think he's a policy wonk that you should really, I wouldn't say emulate. I don't think you emulate any man or woman. You do your best to do what you want to do. But I think, like you said, the longest serving, he wasn't there for no reason. He knew how to, not to mention,
he was doing.
He only came in and he was 4 years in the House, came in right before 1980, and really, I don't even think he served 10 years before he was Senate president. Mm-hmm. Usually people don't serve that short of a time to become that, and has been Senate president since 1987. So he obviously knows what he's doing. You got to give him that much credit.
You got to give him that. He has that savvy to be able to get things done in a way that has to be respected. And so and honestly, I think that, what you're saying when it comes to folks reconciling the fact that you have to give respect to this man that's been able to do, all of this and carry all of this out for X number of years, but also understanding what he has, how he has prevented some things from being able to move forward. Mm-hmm. I think that the challenge is, because he is the longest serving Senate president, he, he's come from a time where, back then, many of these things that we're trying to push would never even be thought of. And so there's also a generational shift that he's had to make and still has to make. And that's why, a lot of times we feel that it's so tough to get his support on things, because he's just not there. And unfortunately, it's because he's from another time. I mean, he's the longest serving Senate president. So
old school. He old school. He don't want to change.
In the history of the United States. Yeah. We're not talking about,
exactly.
The history of the nation.
Yeah, it's a long damn time.
That's a long time.
So if you were a betting woman, now I want to get you in any trouble, who would you think, if he said today, I'm done, I'm going to go home, chill with my family, who do you think would be the person in your mind that would right now have that, as you said, that robust campaign effort, that strategy, and that charisma to be able to take his position?
I can give options. I can offer options for like the first two. I don't know about the charisma.
I can't think of a person.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can. If you really think about like who are some senior senators that's, working with a big amount of money, where, like for instance, the top contender, may very well be the chairman of the Senate Judicial Proceedings
I knew you were going to say that.
Committee, Bobby Zirkin. I mean, think about it, right? He's up until last election, right? He's ran unopposed. And so he's been able to build this campaign chest where even in the past, he's been able to offer money to, whether it be the Maryland Senate Democratic Caucus and things of that nature, where that sends a sign to, the powers that be, that this is someone who, is working with a bit of flexibility, has, run unopposed, so has been able to, do a couple things. So, I mean, he's a top contender. You have Guy Gazzoni in Howard County. Same kind of, war chest.
Guy's a good guy. You like
senior,
that? I know.
Senior senator. But outside of that, I don't know.
It's tough.
Who do y'all think? What y'all thinking?
It better not be Kathy Klostermeyer. I mean, come on. I mean, I know Senate Pro Tem, but that was just, I think, her last hoorah, to be quite honest.
Well, I mean, you never know, right? They might try to, mix it up and say we need a woman leading the Senate, so they might forego.
But you think it would be her? I could think of a couple other women.
I mean, who else do you think?
Honestly, I think it would have been Joan Carter Conway over her had Joan still been there. I don't know. I really don't know. First of all, because we talked about this on Larry's show, they're under the impression that you go out and you get a black treasurer. Nancy Kopp is our treasurer, who most people don't know is elected by the members of the legislature every 4 years to be the treasurer and to sit on the Board of Public Works. But their thing is, we ain't got a black statewide, so we got to put a black person in there. And it's like, okay, well, what's she done wrong? Like, she still wants the job. She's had it since 2002, right before Mike Bush became speaker. So it's been a minute. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But when you think about it, who would we want? Like, now I could think of a few black people I would love to see as speaker, like Adrian Jones and your guy, Derek Davis. I don't know if I would want him, but I definitely want Adrian Jones. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In the Senate, who do you think African-American or Hispanic or, even Republican, God forbid. You know,
I
that's
mean,
what y'all
well,
would say.
look, if you want to, if we're choosing like black senators, right? Who's going to be like, you know, some black candidates? Just look at the Senate, right? Half the black senators they just got there,
Pretty
right?
much.
I mean, the ones that would even be senior senators. Who are we talking about? Dolores Kelly in Baltimore County. Shirley Nathan Pulliam, but she's still kind
She's
of
a
new,
real
right? And
senior.
she's, you know, so
Her and
I mean, who else we got? And the other black ones, they're new, right? Obie Patterson from Prince George's County, Hayes, McCrae, Washington, Carter. Who else is black? Who am I missing?
I think that's it.
Isn't that
Is it
it?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, wait. We do have some more. I'm sorry.
You got 2 more.
Malcolm, but they're still new.
Yeah, they're
You got
all
Malcolm
new.
Augustine, I think, from Prince
Yeah.
George's County, and there's
And
a new
47.
one that
Yeah.
I don't know his name yet, but I'll figure it out. And so, I mean, the majority of the black ones that could be contenders, they're new. So there's no way they're going to be the next Senate president. So if you're looking at a black Senate president, you're looking at Senator Dolores Kelly or Senator Dolores Kelly.
I can see Dolores. Shirley, nah. Dolores, yeah. I can see her doing it.
I
like
could see her. I
Dolores.
could also see her being like, nah, I don't want that.
Yeah, at this point, yeah, why would you? I mean, that's the argument over in the House, whereas though people are saying, okay, Bush is on his way out. Speaker Michael Bush, for those who don't know, Howard County, 30th District, 38, but he's had health problems. And so he's the longest serving speaker at this point, 15 years under his belt. Who's next? And they say Maggie McIntosh. But Maggie's supposed to retire after. I mean, she's 70-some years old. You want a speaker with some lifeline.
Yeah, I think this, you know, this really shows how, and I don't know who's where to lay the fault, right? There just has not been a concerted, intentional effort to develop a bench of viable candidates for when something like this happens, right? Because I mean, think about it: the heads of the party, right? House and the Senate, older white gentlemen who are like dealing with some serious health complications. So any day something could happen, right? And then unfortunately, even our governor had some health complications, right? That could very well resurface. So these governor, Senate president, Speaker of the House, right? Like things are shaky right now. And so who's the bench of candidates that, you know, we've been thinking about and you know, grooming and putting in position to be able to have that seamless transition? We ain't there. I don't know. I don't have no answers for you. I thought y'all was going to have some answers. I got nothing.
I got somebody that can run for office that we got on the bench that I've been waiting to be able to be a part of that campaign. And you see,
You talking about
you see what I'm...
I haven't already.
No, you ain't talking about me for that.
Oh, we already know
I'm
where
still
he's
running.
running. We already got him. Matter of fact, you know how many people this week, from my mother on down, people was like, you know, I have to keep watching your show. We really should have elected that boy state's attorney. I know. People
Everyone
be
has said
telling
that. You know,
Yeah,
it's
but-
funny. People always. The thing about politics is, I think sometimes you get a quick glimpse of people. I think you have to really sit and see the work to understand where they are. You know, matter of fact, that's with us. When we first met each other, we were on different sides of the issue. It was the bail reform. We knew each other before.
I was going to say, Ivan, that was not our first time meeting.
Passing.
Right,
But when
correct.
we really worked with, for, or against, we were on different. We wanted the same thing. I think you realize that now.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
wanted the
I realized
same
that
thing,
then.
but we
Yeah.
were just looking at it from different points of view. And, you know, I learned a lot, have a great deal of respect for you. Always want to make sure you're on my team.
I ain't got to say it like that.
Pitbull.
What's the caveat? What's
There's
the
no
caveat?
There's no caveat. There's no caveat. I still strongly believe in my stance in reference to bail because, you know, as a defense attorney, you know, Jay Wendell, we see what's going on with bail. And one of the things I did want to, you know, just talk about with bail, this is an issue that hopefully you'll still continue to work with and bring up, because the only way you're going to fix what's going on, because now what's happening is the judges are denying more bail, so they're holding more people without
Which
bail.
we knew was going to happen.
And the state's attorney's office is taking advantage of that and getting more people to take pleas just so they can get out of jail. And that has an adverse reaction because now people, they can't get jobs.
Sure.
And that's the whole point.
Yep.
You know, so looking at it, you know, I really, really want to say, look, when you are working to do something in terms, and I know you are, in terms of expanding pre-trial services, please let me know. I'll be the first one to come and testify with you.
Well, I mean, interestingly enough,
And I'm sure you're already working on
yeah,
that.
and we were, so last session, because even back in 2017 when we were, pushing the bail reform effort in Annapolis, when we were on opposite sides, and there was an effort to...
And she won, because look, when I get beat, I can't acknowledge it. And she won.
But I mean, when you really look at it, it's, I mean, in terms of what's happening and what happened afterwards and what's happening now, right? It's almost really difficult to say who won and who lost, right? At the end of the day, I think that folks on both sides understand why the process around updating the rules that determine pretrial detention and release, that was necessary, right? It was time for us to really look at what we were doing, how it was being administered and implemented, and figuring out a way to ensure that we were really trying to reform our pretrial system in an unbiased, effective manner, right? I think, throughout that process, there was a lot of frustration on the part of at least me, because there was this belief that we were trying to eliminate cash bail. Now, while you could argue that cash bail really does not, this idea of having to pay for your freedom, it really should not have any place in the justice system. However, where we were at that point, and even where we are right now, this idea of completely removing cash bail out of the equation, that actually was not something that my folks were advocating for. Now, you did have some advocates that were like, Caryn, you're not going too far. We should be eliminating cash bail. I was not ready for that, because I knew the state of Maryland was not ready for that, because if we eliminate cash bail, what are we ready to put into its place? Yeah. And so even with the rule, if we put cash bail at the bottom of the options that judges must consider, the state legislature did not do their part that same year in investing in those pretrial services so that judges would have options, right? Yeah. Because if they feel that they only have 3 options, and they feel that, okay, I'm not supposed to rely on cash bail because everyone's saying I'm not supposed to rely on cash bail, but I don't feel comfortable RORing you, I'm going to detain you.
Exactly.
And that's what we're saying. And we knew that was going to happen, which is why we were so adamant about, okay, if we're going to do this, let's make sure we're investing in pretrial services robustly, but also working with judges, because there's going to have to be a culture shift on the bench in terms of this non-reliance on cash bail, but also, yes, even in the prosecutor's office. So it was an all hands on deck thing where, unfortunately, I think that there were a number of individuals that used the bail reform effort in 2017 as a way to, and I could say these were individuals who joined our cause, but also those outside of our cause that were just using what was happening in the state of Maryland to, really intensify this idea around, robust, progressive bail reform, and not really using that opportunity to say, if we're going to do it, let's make sure we're doing it right, and let's make sure we're setting up, a process like, okay, the rule is going to take effect in July, 1, 2017. You guys aren't going to invest pretrial services. Well, then next year you better make sure that you're putting a lot of money into pretrial services. The following year we came back, we were only able to get $1 million, and that's supposed to go around the state, right? And so now we're returning this year, and that's why it's going to be even more important. That's why I've actually been very, very intentional about reaching out to, entities like the J. Franklin Bourne Association and the Monumental Bar Association, because I need you folks in Annapolis to be able to say $1 million is not enough for pretrial services. We all understand how important it is for folks to have access to these resources while they're pending trial, right? These things that they should have had access to in the first place, or they probably wouldn't even be in this situation, right?
Well, let me ask you a question. Did you ever think about reaching out to the bail bonds industry to sit down and say, look, we were on opposite sides at one time. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying completely, because the bail bonds industry, they weren't saying that we completely needed to, that bail should be for everything. Matter of fact, their stance back then was on misdemeanors. They didn't believe that cash bail should be allowed at all.
I remember. And our response to that was, you should never, while of course you would think that low-level offenses, it should be just, you shouldn't even have to, go through the process of cash bail or things of that nature. What we were trying to get folks to understand was the very nature of cash bail, or the way that our pretrial system was operating, was in and of itself biased and ineffective. And it actually was not a tool to protect public safety. And so cash bail should not be used for felony offenses. If you are truly a danger to society, then you should be detained. That period, right? Like if there's enough information in front of that particular judicial officer of the court to determine that if released, you would be a public safety risk or a flight risk, you should be detained. No amount of money is going to make you any less dangerous.
Well,
And so why should we differentiate between misdemeanors and felonies? Because I could be charged with a felony and not be a public safety or flight risk. But because I'm charged with a felony, and folks get so worked up because it's a felony without actually looking at the entire picture. And that's what we worry about, because a lot of times, folks will be really quick to have enhanced sentences or add these, additional policies just because it's a felony, while at the same time saying that cash bail shouldn't be in the system at all. So which one is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's sad because I watched them use that as quote unquote a barrier to protect, but also a sword to hurt the individual. When you have an individual who's charged, say, for a misdemeanor second-degree assault, and then they want to sit down and say, oh, because it's an assault, you're a threat to the community. We can't release you.
Which, and by the way, listeners, second-degree assault is kind of a catch-all. And Ivan will tell you this, right? It could go from me giving, Ivan or Hassan a very menacing look, I don't even have to touch you, all the way to, what could be a bad fight. It's also a catch-all for domestic violence offenses. So second-degree assault is, I think it's maybe the fourth or fifth offense that, Marylanders are more likely to be arrested for. So, I mean, and what Ivan said, he's spot on, because second-degree assault is that one where if you have that, just because it's assault.
And many people are being held. And what we're seeing is that in Baltimore County actually has a scale. And we'll sit down and say, okay, we're going to look at a number of things. You're living here. How long have you lived here? Do you have children? The types of things that say that you will not be a flight risk because you are already have the roots to the neighborhood. And I understand the scale. I understand what they're trying to do. But I also think that you give judges so much discretion when it comes to bail. One judge, like in Baltimore City, if you're in a car and there's a gun, oh, you're not getting out on bail. If you're in Baltimore County, you could have the gun on you in the car. I can most likely get you bail. Now in Baltimore County, you're going to jail.
Now, are you in Baltimore County? You saying that with all judges in Baltimore County, or just
I would say probably 75% of the judges in Baltimore County. Baltimore County, this sliding scale. If you're depending on what pretrial your sliding scale says. Now, look, if you have 3-4 handgun prior arrests and convictions, you're not getting out. But let's say a kid first time has a gun on them, the first time offense, 20 years of age, high school diploma, family roots. May either have a job or is in school. Baltimore County, you're going to get out on bail probably 70 to 80% of the time, depending on, the facts are they shoot in the car, guns under the seat. Okay. Baltimore City, 75% to 80% of the time, you staying in jail.
Well, I mean, that's also why I mentioned, because we got to admit that there is a bit of truth to that, right? And that's why I mentioned there has to be a culture shift on the bench, because what's happening is there is a bit of a disconnect when it comes to this, and then you add on this dynamic of, because bail reform is in the news and it's this hot thing, and judges feel that they're being scrutinized, they don't want to make a wrong choice either. Exactly. So they're also going to move into the direction of, what, I don't want no problems. I don't want to let somebody out on bail, and then something happens while they're out on bail, and then I'm in the newspaper because I was the one that let them out on bail. So you know what? Ain't nobody getting bail. And we're seeing that. And so a piece of this has to also be educating our judicial officers around what their options are, the decisional framework that they should be able to use when determining, pretrial decisions and things of that nature. Because, I mean, as much as, we like to say and, are thrilled with the fact that the process in Maryland has begun around reforming our pretrial system, there are still a lot they need to happen
they
to
can
ensure
put me on
that.
the bench. I think I'll make a hell of a judge. Guilty. Get the best.
But I mean, I am worried. There is a worry when we spend so much time talking about what judges are and are not doing, right? And we have to balance that, okay?
Yes,
because you absolutely should talk about our judicial decisions and what our judges represent, because we elect our judges, right?
Yeah.
And so that's important. We must
circuit court elected, district court.
But even still, right, we should be very clear about but also, our judicial officers, our judicial branch, they are gifted with a certain level of discretion, and we have to respect that. And when we start to question or start to maybe add some restrictions to that, then that could very well backfire.
You hear that, Governor Hogan? You my man, but come on, lay off.
For the very population that we are seeking to support, protect, and defend.
Right.
And so I just want us to be very, very careful when we talk about and how we talk about the role of judges, whether it's in pretrial or, quite honestly, even when we talk about these crime bills and, these sentencing efforts. Because, for instance, with the new proposal this year, right, in announcing the new crime bill, there was this statement that the governor made that we hear a lot. 60% of gun crimes, individuals are not serving serious time. And the governor used that comment to preface this comment, that not only are we going to start charging these crimes, under federal mandatory minimums and the like, but we're also going to start requiring more detailed judicial decisions. Let me tell you what that's going to do. When you start putting judges on the spot and listing them out and listing out their decisions and what they do you not think that they are not going to move into the opposite direction of, I'm giving hard time to even the most low level because I'm not trying to be painted as soft on crime? And do you got you see what I mean? It makes me nervous.
It is. And then the other thing that I don't think the governor understands is that in the criminal justice system, especially Baltimore City, some judges are going to have to give pleas because sometimes the state doesn't have a good case. They've seen this individual before them once or twice. Mm-hmm. They can see who they are in terms of what's their background, null pros, null prostet, null pros. Mm-hmm. So they give them a plea because now they have some supervision over them. So the system is a very complicated, convoluted system. And when you do that to judges, and there's a case that's out there right now that sits down and says the state's attorney's office, they're the ones that come up with the plea agreement. So then you're going to have prosecutors sit down and say, oh, you know what? I'm only calling the top count. I want the top count of everyone to go to jail. So on a second degree assault, everybody gets 6 years in jail. Every person in jail is saying they want a trial, which eventually stops the wheels of justice. So you're going to start having people sitting in jail 6, 8, 9 months, 24 months, 2 years. Then you're going to have people that really should be going to trial because they've done violent crimes. Mm-hmm. Their cases will be dismissed because they've waited so long to go to trial. Mm-hmm. It will bring anarchy and chaos to the criminal justice system in a way. When he said that, I just shook my head. Now let's talk about that if we can. His announcement. To me, the one piece that was missing from the announcement, what are you doing and where is the money and the funding for job training, job placement? And what can we do to remove the barriers to get individuals jobs? Because if you really want to drive down the crime, would you not agree with me that we have to give people jobs?
No, there was I was at a meeting one time and, was talking about some of the efforts that we've worked on in Annapolis around expungement and, trying to help those that have interacted with the criminal justice system, successfully reintegrate back into society. And, for the average person, right, they just can't wrap their head around, we don't understand what's taking so long in Annapolis, right? You got a record, employers are using it against us, landlords are using it against us, non-convictions are being used. We're not even, null pros are being used, charges are being used against us, right? And so there was this one guy who spoke and he said something, it wasn't eloquent in nature at all, but it hit me to the core. And it really speaks to what I need our policymakers to understand when it comes to addressing the public safety challenges, whether it be in Baltimore City or around the state. And this gentleman said, I would rather pick a living wage over a prison cage. That's anybody. That is anybody.
Anybody.
That is anybody. And so when we look at our communities, right? When we look at our communities and we look at the communities that have the highest levels, the most money that we're spending in terms of incarcerating folks and, incarcerating them and having them on parole and probation, right? Sandtown, Winchester, Harlem Park. The state is spending $17 million alone to incarcerate folks from those two communities, right? In Baltimore City, it's about $248 million that the state is spending to incarcerate people and mandatory supervision. But Sandtown, Winchester, and Harlem Park, where we're spending the most to incarcerate folks in the entire city, are also the two communities in the entire city that have the highest levels of unemployment, the lowest levels of educational success, the highest levels of lack of access to affordable housing, healthy food. Like all of these metrics that we see in other communities that will indicate a thriving, healthy community are absent in those communities. But what is not absent in those communities is over-reliance on law enforcement, blight, and lack of opportunity where, sometimes if I feel like I don't have many options, the only options that I feel I have to, pivot to, they may not be legal in order to feed myself and my family or just to survive. And many times, when it comes to Annapolis and they got 90 days to get something done and session starts in January and you got the end of the year crime numbers coming out in December, so they got to go to Annapolis and they got to do something. We got to do something about what's happening in Baltimore City, and we got to get everybody off the street. Right now, the hot thing is repeat offenders. And so if anybody, if there needs to be any kind of debunking of myths, is how we talk about and define repeat offenders. And what offenders. You know what I mean? And like why, and what that really means and how it's and how it really plays out in our community. Because right now the hot thing is if you are a repeat offender, then that means that you should there should be no question in terms of you having, enhanced sentences and mandatory minimums imposed on you because you are a repeat offender without having any idea of what's happening in community, and what's happening in folks' lives. This is not to absolve anyone of criminal activity or to, justify, the activity or to, say that we should ignore it and don't care about, our streets being protected. But we tend to, operate in a vacuum when it comes to what we should be doing to address the crime in Baltimore City. And
if I was locked up tomorrow, they would consider me a repeat offender.
Totally.
Even though my convictions were over a decade ago.
Yeah. Totally. So I mean, think about what they passed last year, right? Where, you get an enhanced sentence to do mandatory minimum for if you have possession of a handgun and you have a prior felony. Y'all, it don't matter what prior felony.
I know.
You know what I mean? So it's things
Felony
like that.
Drug conviction from 1991.
I can't.
My question is this: when are y'all going to change the law that anybody? We can leave the station right now. I can go down on Calvert Street to the commissioner's office and file second-degree assault on you.
I know. Okay, so listen,
without
we hear about this all the time.
Any proof
all right,
at
let's
all.
Talk about this. Let's talk about this.
A warrant is going out for your arrest.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this because
that.
I'm torn. Honestly, I'm torn because I completely understand, folks, how easy it is. Yes, to go down Calvert Street. That's the thing. You go down Calvert Street, you get that heartbeat.
Everybody knows it.
Everybody knows that, right?
Now.
I totally get that.
You sleeping with her, huh? Nigga, I got you.
I don't know about all that. I'm just saying, people know that they can go down Calvert Street.
I know.
But also what I do know is while I understand that there could be, some complications when it comes to the ease by which you can obtain, that benefit on Calvert Street, you also have to appreciate the fact that some people may be in situations where they don't want to have to wait for the whole, Monday, Wednesday, Monday through Friday court hours type thing, and they need to be able to have access to a resource that way. So how do you balance that, right? How do you balance both of those concerns, providing the need that should very well be provided to those individuals that need it for real reasons, while also ensuring that it's not being abused, right? And I mean, that's something that we need to, talk about and consider throughout the entire criminal justice.
One of the
should
things
have some
I
kind
think
of
you
proof
should do,
with it, though, because I've been a victim of it. They do shopping. They do what's called commissioner shopping.
He worked up about this. You must have been a victim of this. Who went down Calvert Street on you?
I ain't gonna put her out there. She knows who she is, and I know she's paying attention. She went to the commissioner in the county. Commissioner said, "Okay, what happened? Oh, he did this, and he hit me." Well, miss, I don't see nothing on you. Like, what are you talking about? And caught her in 7 different lies. He put it on the report and said, denied. I'm not putting this out on her. She went then to Calvert Street in Baltimore City and said the same exact story and got it. And I know that commissioner had to have been able to see that she was just at another commissioner and they denied it. And with no proof of nothing, gave it. And this the thing.
I said I'm
driving and they pulled me over just on some license, because the what's those things you put on the stickers you put on your tags, your inspection stickers.
Inspection stickers
was overdated. Right. So it was like friendly, hey, just letting you know. But when they ran my stuff, they said, oh, you got a warrant, right? A warrant? Nigga, I ain't got locked up no time. Oh yeah, somebody went downtown on you. And they knew it. The police knew it. Yeah, I advise you to go turn yourself. Now, they were cool. I see what you're doing. Go turn yourself in or get your lawyer or something.
Yeah.
I had to go hire Bates and Garcia, damn it.
Yeah.
For something that never happened. That is a very big problem.
I said I was torn.
Well, you know what? My suggestion is in Baltimore County, they have prosecutors who have to review it. My suggestion is Baltimore City, you have prosecutors already working central booking. In Baltimore City, make the state's attorney, have them sit right there. And they can work and they can sit and talk and speak to the witness, to the victim, to see if they really feel that something happened. If they do feel that there's something that happened, then they can make a suggestion. You know, we'd like to have a person, charged but released on their own recog, or just issue a subpoena. There are ways to do that, to have prosecutors who deal with real victims each and every single day, and who deal with people sometimes that aren't real victims that are manipulating the system. Sit there and at least have someone who's impartial look at it. And that's why I feel the role of the prosecutor can also be a buffer to make sure the system works properly.
And I think it also speaks to just this larger question that we really need to start taking more seriously and having some real discussions around. It's how we use the criminal justice system to address issues that should not require or should not have that type of response, right? Like whenever there is a domestic violence challenge, I get so angry when, I read the paper or I see in the news where, the response to a domestic, violence incident where there's no serious type of violence that's involved, right? Someone was called, there was, an incident between two individuals, and instead of deploying social workers or human and health practitioners that are skilled and studied and qualified to deal with those type of situations, we then have to send our police officers, our law enforcement officers. And when our law enforcement officers are then brought into our very sensitive, emotional situations where you're having to figure out what's going on with me and my man or me and my girl, and then making a decision based on that, then that's going to complicate and fray relations with the community and the police when you're getting called on things like whether it's your kid acting up, domestic violence, or anything where you feel you don't know who else to call, so you call in 911. And so because they are, so quick to address, be the ones to have to be the first responders to those situations, and they're responding as a police officer, then when you look at them in that sense, it's going to be very difficult for you to want to call them when it's actually time to be protected, because you may have been on the other side of something that wasn't too favorable. And so we need to just start talking about how we use 911 and how we use the criminal justice system, because we're using it in a way where it's.
Who in the world put in a bill that possession of medical marijuana is prohibited in local correctional facilities and at home detention program? Who in the hell? You should know that's illegal. God damn.
I mean, listen, it's always so interesting to see what pieces of legislation are being introduced. But I think you've worked on in the past, and it's kind of building on with some things that you've done in the past, and it's allowing access to voting for individuals that are sitting pretrial. We are just going back to expungement, the unit rule. This is something that, I've kind of been talking about for years, because if we're going to do anything around expungement, we got to get rid of the unit rule. So if anyone who's unfamiliar with what the unit rule is, 9 times out of 10 when you're charged, and Ivan can speak to this, you're going to be from one incident, unit of charges, right? You're going to be charged with a couple things, right? Maybe 4, 5 things, maybe more, And this idea of plea bargaining, right? The whole idea is you're going to plead guilty to something, right? They're going to get you on something, and then they will drop the rest. Now they're dropping the rest. The problem is that it's still attached within this unit of charges. And so the unit rule prohibits expungement of those eligible non-convictions from being eligible for expungement because you pled guilty to one charge. Because think about it. If you looking at time and they're like, if you plead to this, we're going to drop these and you can go home on this, you can go home sooner. They're like, yep, I want that one. I want that one. Not realizing that now once you get home and it's time to do some things, you can't get rid of that record because you pled guilty. And that's now attached to, and it's within a unit of charges. And so all of those other offenses aren't eligible. So think about if you have armed robbery, second degree assault, first degree assault, trespassing, and like CDS possession, right? And you plead guilty to trespassing, because that's usually what it is, right? You're going to plead guilty to the lesser charge. So you plead guilty to trespassing. And then the other the other offenses, they're null prost. When you go to apply for a job, or when you go to, apply for housing, when they pull up Maryland Judiciary Case Search, they don't care about that trespassing. I mean, they might just a little, but you know what they're looking at? They're looking at the armed robbery, they're looking at the assault, they're looking at the drugs, and they're not looking at the fact that it was null prost. It's Latin. They don't know what that means. And so they're just looking at the fact that something popped up. And this is somebody I don't want on my job site. I don't want, housed. I'm not going to give you life insurance. I'm not going to make sure you have access to, higher education, all these things. And so how do we just start getting more, so just going back to your point of, if we're going to talk about addressing a crime, how can we also talk about how folks can move past their criminal activity? Something as simple as how do we allow those individuals who were not found guilty, they were either your charges were dismissed or you were actually acquitted, PBJ, probation before judgment, they were steaded. Those types of, how can we make sure that they're eligible for expungement regardless of whatever plea bargaining negotiation you found yourself subject to?
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I've seen that hold so many people back. One of the things that unfortunately guys will come to me to say, hey, I want you to help me expunge my record. I said, so we'll sit down, we'll look at it, and you'll say, well, I have all these null process. But, I pled guilty to this one offense. Just, I wanted to get out of jail, or I pled, it was an Alfred plea. That's another big one, an Alfred plea. Where I ain't guilty. I just want the benefit of the bargain.
Yep.
And, it was started as rape. Then it was first degree assault. Then it was kidnapping. And then it was second degree assault. And then it was disorderly. And so you took the disorderly because basically you and your girl got in an argument. And now all of a sudden you have the disorderly on an Alfred plea to let you get out. And it was a PBJ Alfred plea. And you like, oh, I'm good. And then now you can't get a job. You can't move on. And I do think that so many people, I don't think, understand how the criminal justice system affects you. I tell people this. It's a big black hole. And it's easy to get in that hole. But it's hard as what to get out.
Almost impossible. It's almost impossible for some folks.
You got to start your own business, all that. Hey, people ain't hard. I
But
tell
even-
people all the time. How many people I represented getting them elected? And by the time once they got elected, I be like, all right, man, I need a job. Nah, boy,
But
If
even
you see your past criminal record, I appreciate you getting me elected. But boy, I holler at you 4 years from now.
But I'm even finding out that some insurance companies, they are, reluctant and apprehensive about, extending insurance. So you tell folks, go out and start your own business. You're trying to get a line of credit and all these things. And they like, ooh, you did what?
Yeah.
Didn't you say Highlands Market?
Come on. What? Yes, I did. What?
No, be
I know.
careful.
So
It's
when
a
I was
crash.
so apparently there was this truck. I'm coming out of, I had to quickly, walk my dog and try to get here. And I see one of my neighbors and they're like, did you see what happened over at Mount Clair Junction? There was this big truck that hit 10 people. I don't know what happened, but
3
just
children
10 people.
injured, a woman killed down at the shopping center down on Pratt Street.
Oh my
Super Beauty.
goodness.
Good night. That's terrible.
Definitely pray for them. Anybody who lives down there, know.
Yeah. But one of the frustrating things of being an advocate and being in this space, but also being a black chick that was born and raised in Baltimore City and still live in Baltimore City, is as we advocate for reform of our criminal justice system, as we advocate for more effective, unbiased policies that dictate what's going to happen in our system and outside of it. You always get mixed up with this whole idea that you are ignoring crime and you just want to see the criminals out on the street. Like I said, I live in Baltimore City and I've lived here all my life and I'm invested in this city. And just like many of these other citizens, we want safe streets, right? For, no pun intended. But we want to be able to, go to work safely, be able to participate in recreational activities safely, feel comfortable in our own homes and walking in our neighborhoods. But what folks also want? Folks also want to be able to trust in our law enforcement officers. They also want to be able to trust in, those criminal justice entities and officials that are supposed to keep us safe and protect us and defend us. And right now we are, we've come to a point where there's just community distrust. And whether it just be, government in general, and this is like across the board, state, local, national, but just community distrust in government, but specifically our Baltimore Police Department. And so even when you're talking about things like plea bargaining, or even when you're talking about what's happening in the court system, at the end of the day, the police have to bring forward cases, and then folks act on that. And if there is any question as to how our officers are collecting evidence or how they are interacting with the community in order to bring forth cases, that jeopardizes the public safety of us all. And so, saying all of that to say, yes, I'm an advocate and I want criminal justice reform, but I also want a strong, effective police department that I can, believe in and trust in. I want safe communities. I want what, folks on the other side are saying they want. We just, want it a different way, and folks may want things quicker than the other. So.
Say that again. A black woman from Baltimore grew up.
Yes, born and raised, city forever.
Look,
Baltimore,
your whole
City
voice,
College High
attitude, School. The head roll with everything.
But I still am the executive director of the Job Opportunities Task Force. But I'm from Baltimore City.
That's right. Not the city of Baltimore. Baltimore City. Big difference. All right, we got a call on the line. They must want to talk about you and your Baltimore City.
Oh,
yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, we got Michael Moore on the line.
Michael,
hello, sir.
What's happening, Cap?
Yes, sir. What's up, Hassan? I was just basically tuning in. How you doing, Ivan? And
Hey, how you
young
doing,
lady, I forgot your name, but
No worries,
Caryn
Caryn
York.
York. Hi, Mr. Moore.
it's a hot topic, and I definitely agree on a lot of things that you all were speaking on, because I'm being firsthand, I can understand. And like Hassan said, a lot of these elected officials, yeah, I like your talent, but your record is blase. But in the same sense, I got people that's locked up behind bars that's up here that so happen to be in murder, but murder guys who murdered 20 other guys. You get what I'm saying? So it's like sometimes who do mediate these type of matters, and not only who mediates them, what type of sense does it make if basically you don't know the full story behind what's going on in or out of the streets? If basically you got somebody that's out there that just basically do a job, they're not going to basically understand the fullness of what's totally going on. Then to basically get out back into society, to a society where as though everybody's not going to jail for the crimes that they may commit, they got the upper hand on you. And then you got jobs that may want to treat you as such or look at your record and want to act like such. Basically, it's making it to a point where as though, hey, you might as well bust a U-turn and go right back to jail if you ask me.
I mean, listen, it's one of those things I mentioned earlier where, we put folks in boxes, right? We make it easy for you to interact with the system. Whether or not, you are born into a community or an environment where you and your family don't have access to options, financial options. So, those options that, excuse me, you do feel like you have to accept may not be legal, right? So then you go to jail, right? For however long, right? It could be 3 months, it could be 3 years, 15, you come back and you go back to the same community, right? That is still looking the same way, if not worse. And you got this record where the record can be used against you in employment and housing and all of that, right? So everything is still the same, and they added some more barriers onto you, but they expect you to act differently and to be able to produce some things out of nothing. And so then when your back is up against the wall, when you're trying, right, you are trying. And when the only option that you feel that you have to be able to support your family, you might got child support that's owed to the family and to the state, right? And then if you're not paying your child support within 60 days, they suspended your driver's license, right? And now you really can't get to work, right? So your back is really up against the wall. Sometimes the only options that you feel that you can consider, they're not going to be legal. So you going right back in and then returning right back to the same. It is a vicious cycle that we're throwing our folks back into time and time again and expecting different results. And isn't that the definition of insanity? I just don't get it. And that's why it's so frustrating when we go to Annapolis and we try to do these crime bills and we're like, oh, we'll deal with the root causes later. When? Like when? When? Somebody tell me.
People's lives, livelihood, kids losing fathers. You can take the Chicago incident, for instance. A lot of the kids' fathers was locked up during those times, and now look at the city.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you ain't getting life, you coming home. And so, what do we want to do with them when they come home? How do we want to receive them? How do we want to make sure they're successful?
One of the things.
Welcome. It's a welcome home. You got to find your own way and depend upon the charge or how violent the nature of the charge. And it may scare some of the family members that used to know all off of what media has displayed. You understand? Yeah, it's definitely a vicious cycle. But I like what y'all doing. And Ivan, man, I didn't know you was that sharp on it, boy. When you said you was a federal lawyer and a state lawyer, I knew you got something going good, man.
Thank you.
I like
brother.
the work that you do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really, really do. You know, one of the things I want to talk about in terms of giving people a chance, giving people a shot. If you have your own business, you have that opportunity. There's a young brother who works with me. I don't say works for me, works with me. Brother named Corey.
Okay.
Years ago, Corey was in Park Heights. He had a reputation, Big Corey. Look, I wasn't there during the early 90s. Corey caught 50 years from the feds. When he was in the feds, 50 years is basically they trying to send that man away his whole life. He was like 20 some years of age.
Yep.
When he was in, he told me that he realized the only way he could be free is he had to free his mind. And so he began to read, began to study. He began to go to the law library. And then he said after year 12, he was so focused on the law library that he just knew that this was going to be for him. He was able to get a paralegal degree, and he did so much that he wrote the judge who sentenced him a letter, because this judge was getting ready to retire, Judge Motz. Judge Motz brought him back, was so impressed with him, and released him after 23 and a half years. I received the call from Stokey. I don't know, a lot of people in Baltimore know Stokey. Stokey, good brother, helps a lot of people out. Stokey said, hey, years ago, Corey did something for me. I know you're looking for a paralegal to help you on the federal side, because you have to. Federal works like a whole new language, so you have to speak. It's like
right, definitely.
It's a totally different world
on the state level, and not even be prepared for the federal.
Feds don't even have cash bail.
No, they don't.
Throw that out there.
They don't. Fed different world, different world. So I interviewed Corey. Corey came. We talked, and it was interesting because he had on this sweater, and I was like, yo, I was rocking that sweater in the '90s, so I knew Corey.
Oh, you going? Why? How you go? Come on. How you going? How you going to go for Corey like that?
Corey's sharp as a tack right now, boy.
He was wearing it from the '90s.
Yo, that's all he had when he was in the halfway
But right
house.
now, honestly, people bringing back stuff from the '90s and '80s.
know?
Probably
No,
fly.
exactly.
He was probably getting all the ladies.
Oh,
he was just coming home.
Corey was just coming home.
Oh, he really wanted the ladies.
That's what I'm saying.
He was like, let me put on my Gucci.
It was a Coochie sweater. Exactly.
I like her. I like her, y'all.
Exactly. So make a long story short, Corey didn't have a resume. Corey had an appeal argument. He filed a case, and Judge Davis heard the appeal, and he did it pro bono. He pro se. He wasn't there, and I heard Judge Davis. I knew his voice because I've been in front of him many times. And he talked about how it was so well pled, so well written, so it was such a good, articulate argument. I gave Corey a job, and Corey and I have been in Louisiana and hired to do federal cases down there in front of the Fifth Circuit. I had a case today. I had to go check on a guy out in Pennsylvania, big murder case in Pennsylvania. And today, the Court of Appeals, Special Appeals, kicked back a case where he won another appeal, and these are briefs that he's writing. And we go to federal court. Every day we're in federal court, we get better and better plea bargains, and we're one of the few people that ever won a case against the feds because of the work that Corey's doing. And I say that to say
give them
the
a chance.
talent is there.
Give them a
chance. Them a chance.
Give them a chance. We are not investing in our human capital. Especially even when we talk about like our black youth, right? Because youth unemployment is a problem right now, right? And especially even, our youth on the streets, right? And the fact that many times the stories have to do with individuals who, are still in their teens, right? And so there's this focus also in Annapolis to, charge youth as adults. And this whole idea of sometimes these folks just need a chance. Yeah. They need a chance to be able to survive. They need a chance to be able to fail and learn from those lessons, like other folks have an opportunity to. And so when we talk about those individuals that, made a mistake, and they may be on their third, fourth, or fifth chance, right? They still need a foot up. They still need an opportunity to be able to build support and to be able to show that I'm ready to get this done. And so I'm always grateful.
And not even just giving out grants. It's just more so those that, climb out the bucket and then, you get out to the top of the bucket. Then, you get some legislative to say, no, going back down.
Yeah.
You understand? That's very bizarre. Like that's not leaving a rehabilitational society that we need. And not only that, you know, if the world is based off of what we create, you got some of the finest creators that's locked up. They got ideas that when they touch the street, that get washed away so quick and easy that
some of the best
even
business
the
minds.
job not working nor the business work.
Let me tell you something. When I went over to jail
business
and
minds,
we had
right?
cigarettes and had no lighter, and the dude
Figured it
came
out.
to me with 2 batteries and a razor blade and made a light out of it, and then took
See?
2 pieces of lead
Enterprising.
and some toilet paper,
Enterprising.
plugged it in the goddamn socket, and caused the light. I said, man,
Hey,
If you
Hassan, you
really
didn't have
think
a
about
hookup,
it-
did you, man? I know you wasn't
And
over
listen, if you really think
Yeah.
about it, the folks, you know, the folks that are involved in, you know, we say they're leading these major criminal enterprises, or even like these drug dealers that are, you know, we can't expect them to get jobs. First of all, what are you talking about? Okay, they getting up
Right.
early in the morning.
Right.
Oh, they ain't getting up. They
Okay.
grinding for days.
And if they
they know
able
they
to
can
run
get
these
jobs. They know they
operations,
can get
they know what
jobs
they
through
do.
the
Come on now.
old-fashioned way. The old-fashioned way of basically through the jail and $2, $3 a day, and then they take the rest of that cut as an agency would probably do, but worse than an agency would probably do.
Telling you.
Yeah.
Oh, your
Like,
boy
yeah,
Caryn
it's-
Young
it's a
says,
dilemma.
"Hey, city." Hey,
City
Polly.
forever. No, we don't do that. We
Hey,
don't do that.
Polly.
We don't. That doesn't even sound right. Like,
Hey, Polly.
We don't even do
City.
that.
City. We ain't trying.
City
All right, Mike. We about to wrap it
All right,
up.
y'all
Too.
take it easy. Have a
you
good
too.
night. I'm gonna see you
Bye,
about
brother.
the show.
All right.
The sky.
Take care, brother. Be
Look,
safe.
look, you was all right till you got on all that singing. I want to say big up to Charlie Carter. Great advocate. She just hit me up about the armed school police. Remember, we had this conversation here on the DMV Daily Show not too long ago. She just learned from Akil Ham that the school board has called for a vote on arming school police on the same day, this week coming up, next week, as the NAACP's public forum on that particular issue itself. Now, the times are the same, except the NAACP meeting, which I believe is this Tuesday. What's Tuesday's date? The 15th, I think. 12, 13, 14. Yeah, 15th. Has organized its forum, has already had its forum. They will start at 6 o'clock, the meeting, and the forum will be promptly at 7 p.m., whereas though the school board meeting, of course, is always at 5 o'clock. That's where they'll be voting on this. And HB 31 will be dealing with this in Annapolis. The city delegation has to come up with some kind of policy
Can I
to
say
deal with
something?
this once and for all.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I say something? Because this goes back to this theme that we're dealing with right now, where there's a problem and we have to balance that with acknowledging that there's a problem, but not being heavy-handed with the solution and ensuring that the solution is actually well-placed, it's not misguided, it's not short-sighted, it's actually not going to put us in a worse position than we started off with. Now, when it comes to our schools, we've seen a plethora of videos where students are interacting inappropriately with teachers and, you know, or with other, you know, classmates. And, you know, there's this sentiment that we need to do something to protect our schools, to ensure that not just the students, but the teachers are protected, right? And so we know no one will ever agree that a student, unless it was absolutely warranted, and I haven't seen an instance where it's been warranted where a student should put their hands on teachers, right? Yeah. Everyone agrees that that is wrong, should never be supported. No one's ever going to support it. You know, even if we may talk about or ask what's happening at home or lack thereof that's leading this teenager to act out in this way against the teacher, that is not saying that we approve that or are absolving them of that inappropriate behavior. This is where the problem comes in. When you acknowledge that and you're trying to figure, okay, what can we do to make sure that we're both addressing these mental health challenges and many of these, you know, challenges that folks are dealing with back home, but how do we also protect the brick and mortar school and what's happening in there? We get things like armed school police officers. Now, I don't see how, if we could just play this out, right? So take the video of the one individual where, you know, she was angry and she hit the teacher, right? And remember, there was like this whole Facebook thing where everybody was like found a mother and everything. She had to move back to Georgia and everything. Yep. It got a bit much, right? So say, for instance, we had armed school police officers in that situation. What would happen? And I'm asking because I really don't know, so I need y'all to tell me because these are some things we need to talk about.
Yeah, I guess.
When would they deploy? When would they deploy firearms?
What the fear is that when she's there, if she didn't act right properly, then an officer could pull their weapon out, and then you're in front of all the children. I don't know what their code of conduct. I don't know how their training is, but I guess that's the theory. I'm kind of understanding the reason that they want to arm the police is because if there's an active shooter that comes into the school, that is
not the narrative that is being used. Sure, like. Now, during the time of the school shootings, of course, you saw a ratcheting up of policies being introduced around having armed school officers to protect against those active shooters, right? Yes. But let's be very clear. When we talk about arming school officers in Baltimore City, we're not talking about active shooters that are going in and doing these mass shootings. We're talking about how do we address what we keep seeing on these videos that are on social media.
And the first time they pull out a gun and one of those kids goes crazy, this poor child gets shot, then, Baltimore City is going to end up paying $75-80 million because a bullet, Lord forbid, hurt, or kill a kid. Then where are we? I think they really need to think that through.
They only need tasers. Look, okay, you can't control the kid.
You gonna tase a kid?
Well, look, we ain't talking about 4 or 5-year-old kids.
First of all, see, and I'm gonna stop you right there because a lot of times,
no,
I know exactly where you're gonna go. No, I know exactly where you're gonna go. You're like, these kids are big.
No,
they still kids.
If you're going to control an environment, you say, look, you got what's her name?
What?
Bodyguards have tasers that are at the clubs.
I know you are not trying to compare. I know you are not comparing. I know you are not comparing.
Why? What happens
down that select lounge. These are kids in a school, and we talking about tasing them.
They go to the club and shake the booty with the same damn officers with the thing. If you're gonna,
that has nothing to do with tasing kids in the school.
Have a taser than a gun in the school.
I would rather there actually be health and human service practitioners that know how to diffuse a situation without actually having to use the weapon. Because if that's the example that we're showing our children. Like, in order to diffuse a situation, you either need a taser or a gun instead of figuring out how to use your words.
Most police officers, sorry, and I know y'all gonna take it wrong, y'all was punks growing up. And half of them get a badge, and that's what they act like. Come on, don't act like this is foreign to y'all. That's what it is. They got tired of getting bullied, getting their butt whipped growing up, and they got and they draw first thing because in their mind,
that is exactly,
you ain't gonna punk me
that
no
is
more.
Exactly why we should not arm our school
Look,
officers.
I'm not for armed officers
and
at
we shouldn't arm them with tasers either.
Well, I'm not for that either. But if there's going to be something, I would rather it be tased because 9 times out of 10, a child ain't going to die from a tase.
What?
They will die from a bullet.
What are you talking about? If you have an officer that's not letting up on that lever, you could die from a taser.
I'm not saying you can't.
You just said it.
I'm saying 9 times out of 10, you won't die from a tase as opposed to you will die from that bullet.
Me and Hassan go like this all the time. So I'm just saying.
That's nothing new. But I
still don't agree with him, though. I do not
I don't
think
care.
that we should
You
be
gotta
arming
agree.
school
We ain't got
officers.
to always agree.
And tasers are not any better.
No, wraparound services ideally would be the best. Community schools
especially
are the best.
Yes.
Bottom line, we understand that.
Because these are behavioral issues. I mean, think about it. It's like, and especially when you start to look at the racial dynamics, right? In white schools, we're not talking about tasers and arming and things like that. We're talking about, oh my goodness, how can we get resources in? Because Johnny,
they put them in timeout.
Oh my goodness. We're not doing that at Affirmative Templeton. You know what I'm saying? Like,
we have another caller on the line. We have Christopher Irving on the line. Brother Christopher, you there? Christopher?
Hey, Chris.
Hello.
Hey, man.
Hey.
How's it going, everybody? I couldn't listen for some reason, so I don't know where you are in the conversation.
armed school police officers, and Hassan thinking that we should arm school police officers or giving them tasers.
No,
Happy New Year, Chris.
That's the alternative to guns. Come on, go ahead. What's up, Chris?
Nothing but first of all, good evening to everybody. Hassan, and let me start with your guest, young lady Caryn.
Hi, Chris.
Hassan, to Ivan, and to Jason. Good evening, everybody.
Hey, good evening. Yeah. Good evening.
I came in late, but one of the things that I came in on that I really wanted to grab a hold of is Ivan was talking about the brother that works for him named Corey.
Mm-hmm.
And the experience that he gained because he had the time to focus on his own condition. I think what's overlooked a lot of times is that there are people who have achieved that level of expertise on their own issues because they're actually living it. And so you have people who have years. Think about how a lawyer acquires their degree. Ivan, yourself, how many years did you go to school to become the lawyer that you are today?
Just 3 extra years, but to be the lawyer I am today, that took many years of being in that courtroom.
But it was
Now,
4-year
compare that to
graduate
some-
school. And
compare that to
You got
somebody-
your 3 year, then 3 years of law school, and then you have to pass the bar. But that definitely didn't. Let me tell you, if that was the requisite, really, to just be like a really good lawyer, that sometimes I think about how scary that is.
Well, I would say compare that to somebody who goes into prison at, say, 20 years old, and they spend 20 years of doing nothing but studying their case.
Yeah.
And cases similar. Some people call those jailhouse lawyers, but they call them that for a reason. A lot of times they're getting people's case, they're giving some time back, or cases totally overturned. And yet we kind of, when these people come out, we kind of just, that's good. You know a little something. I think this is one of the areas of social justice, of advocacy, period, that the people who have the lived experience are given the least credence, and that's a shame. I think that's a terrible shame. In every other area of advocacy, it's the people who have the lived experience that are listened to the most. But this is one of the areas that we can all learn from. Even people who have lived the experience, then they feel like they know the most, and they don't make room for the person who might have had the same experience as them. So I just think that that's something that we need to all consider, is that when people have the time to sit down, they don't have other things going on in their lives, like the average people on the street.
Right.
They get to literally zoom in on nothing but their issue and the issues like theirs who are in the cell to the left of them, to the right of them, that they pass in the child hall, in the yard, etc.
Right. And I
they
just
spend that time.
And I just want to piggyback on what Chris is saying, because Chris brings up an important point, and actually you're finding that a number of individuals who are coming home and they want to advocate on behalf of themselves, right? And they have great ideas on the solutions that are going to be necessary to address their situations, right? And they're trying to go after these opportunities that will allow them to support the work that they're trying to do, whether it be advocacy or whether they're trying to, create a training program that would focus on their particular population. And what they're having to go up against, and I know this to be true because I'm the board chair for Out for Justice, member-led organization, formerly incarcerated individuals. And even what they're dealing with is they're dealing with these groups that, quite honestly, there's one where you have this new group that just popped out of nowhere, and these are two young white ladies who participated in a Hopkins fellowship, and then they were able to get another fellowship, and now they've been able to position themselves as experts when it comes to women's reentry. And they are getting access to spaces, more than those women that have been doing this work for years, trying to galvanize support around whether it's women's pre-release or, just better treatment of women behind the fence. But because, these individuals had access to like a fellowship or these very formalized institutions and relationships, then they have access to the tables and the opportunities to be able to then say what's happening with the Out for Justice members without actually consulting with the Out for Justices or the Maryland Justice Projects and the like. So, Chris is spot on.
And groups like Lazarus Wright, who
Yep.
on Christmas Eve in the damn cold had people out there ready to work with a broke down bus that Chris had to put out of his own pocket and fix himself. Yeah, I saw the video on Facebook. You ain't had to tell me. I saw it. But that speaks volumes.
I'm actually pretty proud that our that's the nonprofit, our for-profit business. We just hired 3 other guys. One of them did 20 years. I'm very proud of that, and I'm going to keep beating that horse.
As you should.
And when you speak to this guy, you would think that you were speaking to any legislator, because he's that well versed on all of the aspects of what he dealt with.
Well, Chris, that's not really honestly, you've dealt with legislators where you even question how y'all don't know the law. and you the legislator.
Don't know how to write.
Like,
a
I mean,
bill
it's
to save
it's
them,
honestly
like, poor reading.
amazing how I can't tell you how many there was. I'll never forget this one time where, and it wasn't a bill that I was working on, but someone was testifying, and this was an individual. He had his paperwork, y'all. He was standing before JPR. He was telling them his experience. This is what I went through. This is my paperwork. This is what I had to do. So I had to call and everything. And the legislators, who are lawyers, tried to tell him. Were pretty much doubting him that you didn't get incarcerated for that. That's not an incarcerable offense. They were this is what it was. They were trying to say that driving without car insurance was not an incarcerable offense. I promise you, was going back and forth with this guy. Back and forth. So finally, the legislator got up, went to the back of the room, got the law book, pulled it out, and was like, oh my goodness, he's right. So like this, you even have lawmakers and they are making the laws, they're lawyers, and they will. So, I mean, yeah, what Chris is saying, it hits a couple different points. Sorry, Chris, but I mean, it does.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I think this is a great show. I think the aspects that you all bring to the show on this particular issue, from Hassan and his experience, of course, Ivan and his, and Caryn, you and yours. I think this is such a needed conversation that needs to continue. It needs to bring even more people into it, the aspects of not only the impacted people who might sit in the cell, but the families that support them, that support network that we don't often talk about. They don't get left out. We don't often talk about them, but the ones who do get left out, I think, are the children.
Yeah.
We don't talk to enough children of long-term incarcerated people to understand the ramifications of that, the things that we see going on in the city right now. If you talk to a lot of these youth, they'll tell you that their parents and other family members have been incarcerated, or they'll tell you that they don't know their parent or whatever because of incarceration and things like that, and how it is all intertwined as an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like we need the Christopher Irvin reentry podcast program going on here.
Hello.
Yep.
I don't even listen to podcasts. I listen to that one. That one and this one.
Yep.
All right, well,
Thank you guys for taking my call.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Be safe this weekend, brother.
All right, y'all. We
Is
got
it really
go.
going to snow this weekend?
It is. Thank
Yep.
God. I hope
go
it
to the
snows
grocery store.
all Sunday night.
Yep.
Everything shut down Monday because I damn sure don't feel like going back to work.
Guys, thank you for having me on. This was
Yeah, this
great.
is great,
Can you
great
invite me
show.
back during session,
Yeah,
like before the
definitely.
session ends? Because it's going to get cray-cray.
We'll think about it.
Don't act like that.
Should we have her back, y'all?
Yes.
Thanks,
Family?
Yes.
They said no. Gotta go. Remember, new promise begins with the new day. And for the promise of tomorrow is greater than that of yesterday. We'll be back on Monday. Have a great weekend.
Free Keith Davis.